Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report for the 27th day in the 8th month, 16th year of Changi. And this is Tim Elder singing for the second king of Changi, Cheongjin Moon. And if I'm smiling a little bit more than usual today, it's because, uh, well, you'll see in a minute. You'll see in a minute. All right. Anyway, right now, though, let's see. Let's do our usual trip around the kingdom in Chongpyeong, Tennessee. It is 54 degrees and clear. Today, very warm with clouds and sun, high of 79. Tonight, warm with increasing clouds, breezy late with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm, low of 61. And then at the True Father's hometown of Cheongju in North Pyongan province, what is today North Korea, it is currently 41 and clear, getting down to 35 tonight, chilly with increasing clouds. Tomorrow, decreasing clouds and cooler, high of 53. And 37 degrees right now at the Tony Palace in Northeast Pennsylvania, mostly cloudy skies. Today, getting up to 67, cloudy this morning, pleasant with clouds and sun this afternoon. And then the low of 42 tonight, mainly clear. At the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Limestone County, Texas, currently 67 and clear. Some sun with a stray thunderstorm, humid, breezy this morning, high of 87. Tonight, partly cloudy with a thunderstorm in spots. Early this evening, becoming breezy late and low of 60. And at the Cheongung Palace in South Korea, cloudy, 65 right now. Getting down to 60 tonight, and evening shower and spots, otherwise cloudy. Tomorrow, cloudy, high of 72. And at the Gunma Palace is in Japan, mostly cloudy and 70. And it is cloudy most of the time tonight, low 62. Tomorrow, considerable cloudiness, high of 74. And then in Guangzhou, Guangdong province in China, currently cloudy and 93, I think. Let me check here again. No, I'm sorry, it's going down to 87. Uh, uh, Clear at 87. And then tonight getting down to 76, mainly clear, warm, and humid. Tomorrow, breezy, very warm, humid with sunshine, high of 91. All right, let's go to Father's Word in the Cheonseonggyeong. And today we are in the restoration of the true God's homeland, chapter 5. Our attitude as we make a new beginning. That's the title of the chapter, chapter 5. And I'm in section 6 of chapter 5. Let's see here. All right, well, let's do this paragraph here, this sentence here. What on earth is the Unification Church? 통일교회는 도대체 뭐냐? And as I mentioned, Father used the term Unification Church quite often, although that term did not originate with him. It originated with the Korean media when they first started reporting about the Unification Church or about Father and the people around him in 1955, during what's known in our church's history as the Ewha University incident. And that incident eventually led to Father being imprisoned at Sodaemun prison in Seoul for 3 months from July 4th to October 4th of 1955. He was found innocent of the charges against him. The charge against him was draft dodging. And his defense was that, well, he was kind of busy filling sacks of toxic ammonium nitrate fertilizer at a forced labor camp in North Korea at the time that he was supposed to be registering for the draft. So the court said, okay, yeah, you're right. All right, so you're innocent. All right, so anyway, what is the Unification Church? So, that term Unification Church should be applied to people who recognize Father as the Lord of the Second Advent and study and do their best to follow his teachings. All right, just saying, we've got some other people who are claiming that term, or at least the media is assigning that term to them, who don't deserve the term. Anyway, let me not get too far off into that tangent. Okay. What on earth is the Unification Church? Let's go to the next sentence, shall we? Okay. So we um, are we going to embrace the right and embrace the left and embrace both of these? And so we embrace. Also, no, no. Let me correct that. We embrace the right. We embrace the left. Where are we going as we embrace both of these? Where are we going? Okay. Um, so 여기에 몰려서 싸우는 투쟁의 세계로 넘어서 세계를 넘어서 하늘이 인도하는 행복의 세계로 유토피아 세계로 인도하는 것입니다. Okay, well, that's fantastic. Okay, so we are transcending the world of struggle. Okay, that's kind of for Marxists that says what? No, it's all about struggle. No, Father says 투쟁의 세계를 넘어서, so transcending the world of struggle, and we are going to the world of happiness, the world of utopia, where heaven leads us, which is where heaven is leading us. Praise God. So, but we cannot go there. 평면적으로 가서는 안 됩니다. We cannot go there in a, what shall I say, 평면적으로, two-dimensional way, I think is what he's saying here, two-dimensional way. 그것은 무슨 말이냐 하면 통일교회가 사상적으로 체제에 의해서. Oh wow, this ties in directly with that story that's making me so happy today. That's incredible. Father, thank you. Okay. 그것이 무슨 what that means is, well, thank you. Ty's going to tell us what it means, but not going two-dimensional. What that means is 통일교회가 사상적으로 체제에 의해서 몰락하고 실패했던 것을 전부 다 수습할 수 있는 논리 체계를 갖춤과 동시에 이를 품어가지고 횡적으로 움직일 수 있는 동시에 종교를 중심 삼고 정적인 기준에서 움직일 수 있는 영적 체험의 기반을 중심 삼은 초월적 실체를 추구하지 않으면 안 될 내용을 가져야 된다는 것입니다. Okay, well, that's a mouthful, isn't it? That was all one sentence. So what that means is at the same time that we have the logical system that is able to take care of all the failed philosophies and ideologies and so forth. We have the logical system of to do that. But 동시에, but at the same time, 이를 품어가지고 왼쪽으로 움직일 수 있는 동시에, and at the same time that we are able to embrace these and move horizontally, right? So at the same time, and this is important. Thank you, Father. Yeah, this is important. Centering on religion, we are able to move vertically, and we have the and we must have that transcendent. We must pursue the transcendent experience based on spiritual experiences. Okay, so that's going to tie in with what I was going to say. Yeah, it ties in perfectly. Wow. Father knew it. So I was going to start with China, but China can wait because we got this other thing going on. And turns out, all right, that this guy, let's see here, turns out that a Russian envoy proposed to President Trump that there be a tunnel linking Alaska to Russia. And President Trump is apparently this has caught President Trump's imagination. He is saying now, hey, that's a great idea. That's somewhere here. He's saying, wow, have you heard of that? And yeah, and actually, he was in a meeting with Zelensky, and he actually turned to Zelensky and said, "Hey, what do you think of this idea?" Well, Zelensky was not so interested, and I can see why. I can see why. I mean, Zelensky is going to think, "Well, what? What on earth are you talking about? That's not what this meeting is for. Do you remember, Mr. President? We've got something else going on that we're supposed to talk about." Okay. So anyway, President Trump's interest has been piqued by this Kremlin envoy. So, and if you want to know about the um, Bering Strait Tunnel, you've come to the right place. Because I was Secretary General of a nonprofit corporation that father established about what is this now 17 well in the late well before 2009 about in about 2006 or 7 he established this nonprofit corporation to do exactly this, to build the Bering Strait connection and also a connection between the Korean Peninsula and the Japanese island of Kyushu. So sit back, because here comes your briefing on the Bering Strait connection. So anyway, first let's look at this, see where this guy is going. Okay. Kirill Dmitriev, chief executive officer of Russia's 10 billion RDIF investment fund and the Kremlin's investment envoy to America on Thursday, proposed building a tunnel beneath the Bering Strait that would link Alaska with Russia's Chukotka region. Dmitry suggested the tunnel could be named after President Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. All right. Anyway, let's go. Let's go. Continue. Carrere based his proposal on Soviet Union documents from the 1960s, presented to Representative Anna Polina Luna on Thursday by Alexander Darchiev, Russia's ambassador to the United States. The documents mostly concerned the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963, but one of them described Russia's idea for a Kennedy-Khrushchev world peace bridge that could and should be built between Alaska and Russia at once. Nikita Khrushchev was the prime minister of the Soviet Union at the time. Russian and U.S. territories are separated by less than 2.5 miles at the narrowest point in the Bering Strait. The World Peace Bridge would have connected Little Diomede Island, which is Alaskan territory, with Big Diomede Island in Russia. Little Diomede is home to a small community of Inupiat hunters and fishermen, while Big Diomede Island hosts a Russian weather station and a military base. Dmitriev on Thursday posted a photo of the World Peace Bridge plan and gushed, with modern Boring Company technology, this can become Putin-Trump tunnel connecting Eurasia and Americas for less than $8 billion. Okay, all right. Not polite to laugh. Okay, anyway, the Boring Company is one of billionaire and Trump ally. Really, is Trump ally? Okay. Anyway, keep going. Elon Musk's operations, specializing in tunnel construction. Among its current projects is a tunnel running between downtown Nashville, Tennessee, and the Nashville International Airport. A tunnel beneath the Bering Strait linking Alaska with Chukotka would be about 70 miles long, as Dmitriev noted in an X message to Musk. Okay. Yes, okay, that's about right. All right. And so here, yes. Traditional costs are over 65 billion, but Boring Companies could reduce it to less than 8 billion. Let's build a future Russian envoy told Musk. Oh boy. Okay, anyway, let's keep going. Dmitriev said his RDIF and Russia's Arctic Fund could provide financing for the project along with our international partners. He said the tunnel, which could be completed in less than 8 years, would create jobs and boost economies. RDIF has already invested in and built the first ever Russia-China railroad bridge. The time has come to do more and connect the continents for the first time in human history. The time has come to connect Russia and the US, he said. Skeptics noted, okay, that the proposed tunnel would essentially link nowhere with nowhere, since neither Russia nor the United States have roads or rail infrastructure within hundreds of miles, hundreds or maybe even thousands actually, miles of the proposed construction site. Also, the region is noted for seismic activity. Dmitriev has been tasked with running Russia's counteroffensive in the United States, so his enthusiasm for the improbable Bering Strait tunnel might be taken with a grain of salt. One of his major objectives is to push economic ties between Russia and the United States that might weaken Western resolve to punish Russia for invading Ukraine. Neither Donald Trump nor Elon Musk had responded to Dmitriev's tunnel suggestion as of Friday morning. Well, actually, yeah. So during a White House meeting, President Trump did respond or commented on this. If I can find that, where did I see that here? I saw it somewhere. Right, and basically he said, "Yeah, that's an interesting idea." Basically, he said, and he was asking, Zelensky what he thought, and Zelensky was not at all pleased. Okay. Anyway, so all right. So first of all, this idea of a tunnel or a connection between Siberia and Alaska has been going on for more than 100 years. Tsar Nicholas was interested in this, and actually, in the early 20th century, a corporation was formed, I believe, in New York or New Jersey, to actually to do this because this was that was still the sort of the golden age of railroad. And some railroad people were thinking, hey, you know what? Let's build a railroad from New York to Paris, right? That's a that's a great idea. And well, uh, I don't know if they exactly were aware of all the technological problems that they would face at the time, but they did actually form something. But then, of course, the Russian Revolution came along, and that went away. But Lenin was also interested in this, as was Stalin, and so successive Russian leaders have been interested in this. Uh, Yeltsin actually proposed this, and he actually came up with a $65 billion figure that was mentioned in the article right now. But his idea, during Yeltsin's time as the leader of Russia, Russia was in a very difficult financial situation, and so he wanted to do with IMF money, International Monetary Fund. Did not get very many supporters for that. People just sort of laughed and said, okay, well, ha, ha, ha. And I was not aware of this Khrushchev Kennedy deal, but that sort of adds to it. And then also, during President Reagan's term in office, an architect in San Francisco, a Chinese American architect whose name escapes me right now, actually, he was an architect and he drew up some architectural drawings for a bridge between Alaska and Siberia. And he presented this to President Reagan. I have not seen those plans. I called the company that he founded, and he was president for a long time. And by the time I called him, he was already dead. But I talked with someone at the company that he founded, but they said no, we don't have any record of that. So perhaps there's a record at the in the Reagan library. I don't know. That would be nice if there were. Anyway, President Reagan did receive architectural drawing for a bridge. Now, for this Chinese American architect, the bridge was important because he said, people have to be able to see it. Now, Father initially said that there should be a bridge between Alaska and Siberia. Later on, he also seemed to allow for the possibility of a tunnel. Now, but as the Breitbart article just mentioned, it is, whether it's a bridge or a tunnel, it is something that's going to go from from nowhere to nowhere. So unless you're connecting New York to Paris or Chicago to Paris or to London now, well, since now you have the tunnel, so now it would be connecting the United States to London. It would be a land connection that goes all the way from Chicago or New York to London. And unless you're going to do that, there really is no way of justifying this. Um, and some people will say, well, you're going to who's going to go all the way up there to to make that long, long trip. But actually, the shortest distance, listen carefully, boys and girls, the shortest distance between Chicago and Beijing is a line that goes 50 miles north of the Bering Strait. Did you get that? The shortest distance between Chicago and Beijing is a line that goes, a straight line that goes 50 miles north of the Bering Strait. So actually, the Bering Strait is too far south. It's not too far north. It's too far south. It should be another 50 miles to the north, and it'd be even better. And some people have already, they've realized this, and they've already been putting this out. And so it's not going all the way up. It's actually because of the way the Earth is shaped, the round and actually more of a sort of an oblong egg shape, kind of, not exactly egg shape, oblong shape. It's actually shorter that way, which is why, if you are going to fly from New York to Tokyo or New York to Seoul, you'll notice that the planes these days, because of the political situation with Russia, it's a little bit different. But in the past, when things with Russia were going well, a plane that took off from JFK, how would it go? It would go straight across Canada to the north shore of Alaska, and go across the Bering Strait there, the Arctic Ocean there, and then come down through Siberia and northeast China, and then come down a line, and it's coming straight towards the North Korean border. And at the very last minute, it makes a hard right. You don't you don't even feel it, but when you're looking at it on the map, it looks like a 90-degree turn, and then sort of come around, and you come into Incheon from the west. That was before the Ukraine war. Now it's different. Now it doesn't. They don't actually do that anymore because they don't want to pay money to Russia for going across their territory. So this is the shortest distance, right? And some people will say, "Well, wait a second. Why? What is the economic justification for this? Isn't it cheaper to take things by freight, by ocean?" Yes, it is. Water is always cheaper. Transportation by water is always cheaper. This is why rivers and lakes are important to transportation, act as important transportation infrastructure. Because you don't have to build the railroad, right? I mean, it's already there. The basic sort of infrastructure is there. The river is the infrastructure. The ocean is the infrastructure. And then you just have to run the ships over it. But if price were the only consideration, then of course the air freight industry would never even exist. And also the advantage is that if you're going to be shipping grain, for example, let's just say you're going to ship grain from Chicago to the middle of Asia, let's say to Kazakhstan or someplace there in Central Asia, then it's then a railroad or a road network would allow you to do this in one way, one course. Right now, you have to take it from the farm, all right, and then you truck it to the shore, then you put it on a ship, and the ship goes across, and then the ship has to be unloaded. And sometimes if ports are congested, like Long Beach port is often congested, ships have to wait a couple of weeks sometimes to get in there to unload their stuff. And that takes time. And then you have to put it on another truck, okay, and then take it out there. So this would allow just one mode of transportation. So that's another advantage. So distance and the efficiency of having just one mode of transportation would be another advantage. As far as the engineering is concerned, this is where things get a bit dicey. The tunnel, if it's a tunnel, the tunnel itself is not a problem. And as the ambassador said, actually the tunnel, I'm sure Elon Musk could do it without too much problem. The Bering Strait Ocean is not that deep. It's between 60 and 100 feet deep. During the Ice Age, the Bering Strait, of course, was actually dry. It was dry. And the reason for that is that snow would fall on the continents, and instead of melting, it would stay there. and it would just and so the ocean was not being replenished by the melting snow, and as a result, the water level of the oceans went down, and so the Bering Strait was actually bare land, and it wasn't even iced over because it turns out that if you look at the maps of the ice age, um, that part of the world is actually dry. The glaciers came down New York, the Finger Lakes in New York, and it came down, and still, and even all the way down to Kentucky, actually, on the eastern side of the North American continent. But on the northwestern end of the North American continent, or in the northeastern part of the Asian continent, it was relatively dry, and you had basically just a grasslands. And so it was there was a land bridge that would allow uh, people at that time to sort of they're chasing game, and all of a sudden they're in a new continent. They didn't know it. So, it's relatively shallow, and the actual tunnel digging process would be easier than the tunnel because with the tunnel it was very soft, uh, geologically soft, and so it was very difficult. But here it's hard rock, and so boring machines would be better, would do better. Also, one geologist told me that he said, Tim, you've got gold on the east side of the Bering Strait, and you've got gold on the west side of the Bering Strait. Just saying, okay. So he says, if you actually do that, probably the gold under the Bering Strait is going to pay for the whole thing, or at least a big chunk of it, depending on the price of gold. Right. So it's a very interesting project, but you still have the thing of nowhere to nowhere, which is true. And there's a reason for that. Aside from the fact, right now in Alaska, the only way to the Wales in Alaska is the community that is on the east side of the Bering Strait, and the only way to get to Wales, which I went to actually, the only way to get there was by plane, and there is a landing strip there that has no tower, and you just have to sort of just have to wing it, so to speak, and hope that the weather doesn't close in while you're there. Because if it does, then you may wind up staying in someone's home for a week or two. Fortunately, when I was there with a few other people, the weather held up for us, and we were able to get down on the ground and sort of speak to the people there and so forth, and ask them what they thought of this kind of thing. And they liked it. Uh, they said, what we need as here is access to jobs and education. And the unfortunate thing about these communities in Alaska is that they have a very high suicide rate, and also the young people do not want to stay there, uh, and it's very difficult to get health care. Basically, the way that Alaska works is someone gets sick, they're able to call in a plane, and the plane will take them to a large community, maybe to Fairbanks or to Anchorage or to some other place to go to a hospital. But um, there is no medical facility right there. And so they were saying that, if this gives us better access to the outside world, then that'd be great. Um, in terms of the environmental effect, the way geology of the at least the eastern side of the Bering Strait is that there's so Wales is on the coast, and then from Wales there's a slope that goes up, and so if the road or train is going to come from the east, then it'll probably have to go under that slope, and so people in Wales will not actually see the train or experience the train at all because it'll be going down way down under, tens of feet under the village by the time it gets there. On the other side of the Bering Strait, I think it's more of a cliff. The group that I was with tried to go to the other side of the Bering Strait, but the something very strange happened, and anyway, we were not able to go there. Um, and it was a very strange experience. But anyway, the bottom line, we were not able to go to the western side of the Bering Strait. Um, but now the problem is that the tundra, the permafrost. Now, in permafrost, the problem, of course, is that if you build a road, then the road absorbs heat from the air or from the transportation that's going over it, and that melts the permafrost underneath it, and it's almost impossible to maintain a road in that kind of a environment. Which is why one of the reasons that there are no roads in that area. Uh, Railroads are better because with a railroad, you can have these devices that sort of radiate the heat back off of the ground and back into the air. And so, and also already, I know systems are being used in some areas where this kind of problem exists. So a railroad is probably easier than a road, but Father wanted an international highway system, and the Bering Strait was going to be sort of the linchpin of that international highway system. And Father wanted people to actually drive their cars. Okay, if it's a tunnel, engineers have told us that there's no way that you can have um, cars with hydrocarbon fuel driving through a tunnel like that. You cannot ventilate it. He said it's about 70 miles. Actually, when you figure the distance that you're going in and coming out, it's going to be like more like between 80 and perhaps even close to 100 miles. And you can't ventilate a tunnel like this. There are two islands in the middle. That is true. Little diameter and big diameter. That's true. And of course, you can have ventilation shafts there. But even with that, the engineer said it's not possible. That's one problem. And also, um, you know, I don't know if people have experienced driving through a long tunnel. Here in Taiwan, there's a tunnel that goes apparently 12.9 kilometers, I believe. I believe I'm reading the road signs correctly. 12.9 kilometers, which is what? 16 would be 10 miles. So this is about 8 miles, roughly 8 miles, I guess. And some people refuse to drive it because they say, I can't focus on the road in that kind of a situation where just going and going and going and going and going and it's just tunnel and tunnel and tunnel and tunnel and tunnel. And that's only 8 miles. So if it's an 80-mile tunnel, think of it. Also, I don't know if you've driven through the Harbor Tunnel in Baltimore. My wife and I would drive through that tunnel several times on our way up to listen to Father at East Garden when we were living in Virginia. That tunnel, I think, is a little bit better. Maybe it's because it's better lit or something. I don't know. Maybe the width is wider. I don't know. There's something about that harbor tunnel that I think made it easier to drive than this tunnel here. Anyway, those kinds of things I suppose can be fixed. Perhaps you can have a rest area, a couple of rest areas, maybe a bunch of rest areas along the way. I don't know. But tunnel does have that kind of an issue to it. If it's a bridge, you've got the weather, right? Very strong winds in that area, very strong winds. Uh, and especially, winters are cold and you've got ice flows and stuff like that. And so, the engineers would have to deal with that. But again, with a bridge, I suppose, the fact that it's probably only about 60 feet deep, or, these days they don't even have to anchor it on the ocean floor. They can, these days, I think they have a way of doing something like that up above the ocean floor, I think. So there are, I suppose, possibilities, but still the nowhere to nowhere business still has to be taken care of. So what does it connect? And I said, Chicago to Beijing, straight line, shortest distance. But there are probably easier ways to get to Beijing than to drive several thousand miles. No. Father wanted to do this because he wanted people to interact with each other, people around the world to interact with each other. And so to him, it was important that people drive. Um, Now, since then, of course, since Father first proposed this, by the way, in 1981, I believe, 81 or 82. I think it was 81, at a professors or the International Conference on Unity of Sciences that was held in Seoul in 1981, I believe it was 81 or 82. Pretty sure it was 81. And it was part of the whole system, together with the Busan to Kyushu connection as well. And he said that you should be able to drive from the tip of Africa up and to the from Africa to the Bering Strait, and from the Bering Strait down all the way down to the tip of South America, and so connecting Europe and so forth. And his map that he proposed also had a way of connecting Australia as well to Southeast Asia and so forth and so on. So right, but Father, the interesting point about Father, and the reason that I say that this quotation that we read today uh, ties in with this, is because Father said that religions should um, head this up, that religion should head this up. So I talked to the guy in our movement who was in charge of contacting religions about this, and I was shocked by his response. I think I've mentioned this. I have mentioned this on King's Report. His response to me was, "Well, what's in it for them?" My jaw kind of dropped because I thought, well, world peace. Isn't that what religions are all about, right? But I was taken aback, and I actually was not able to give him a response because I was actually kind of shocked at the silence. I thought it was kind of a given that religions would jump at this thing, but apparently not. Apparently not. But it's interesting to me that Father was not saying that government should do this. I mean, obviously, this Russian guy, he's saying that government should do this. And oh, by the way, the cost, the $60 billion, I said that was Yeltsin's figure. And I think there's so the Russians are still, what is it, almost 20 years later, about 20 years later, still saying $60 billion, as if there hasn't been any inflation or any debasement of the currency. So Yeltsin was talking $60 billion in what, about 2000? When is it? I've forgotten when he was in charge, but uh, anyway, it's been a few years since he was in charge. Okay, so and then he says, well, with Elon Musk's technology, it could be 8 billion. Well, but also that does not. He's not talking about the nowhere to nowhere business. Now that was one, but then also who was it? It might have been Putin. Anyway, there was another proposal made by Russia after Yeltsin saying that we'll do this. Oh yeah, and oh yeah, and he also, I think that person also brought up the 60 billion figure, but they said, hey, you know what? We will build it all the way. We'll not only build it from on our part, okay? We'll build the roadways or the high, actually the railroads on our side. We'll build the tunnel, and we'll build the railroads on the Alaskan side. You can thank us later. We'll build the railroads on the Alaskan side, and then all the way to the railhead of the Canadian railroad system. Okay, so let's take a look at that. What is he talking about here? So he's talking about going all the way down to Prince Rupert here. to Prince Rupert. Okay. So, but this is actually quite a distance. This is only halfway up British Columbia. Okay. So that's quite a ways. We're going to do that for 60 billion. Probably not. Probably not. Probably not. So, people throw this around, and I guess, I think this ambassador or this envoy is also sort of throwing this out because he knows it's not going to happen, but he just wants to send the message that, hey, we want to be friends with the United States. So, but the question is, why has Russia always been interested in this? As I say, it's been something that's been on the Russians' mind since Tsar Nicholas. Why? Well, there is uh, a significant portion of the Russian population, there always has been, that has seller's regret with regard to Alaska. We got a raw deal. We sold Alaska much too cheaply, and we need to exert our influence back into the North American continent. I think that is a big part of it, right? But also, they would like also Russia. I think genuinely would like to have better relations with the United States, and this would certainly help that if there was a direct route, an actual border between Russia and the United States, where you got freight going back and forth, if not all that many people, at least freight going back and forth. That would certainly, I think, help to uh, create much better ties between Russia and the United States. So I think there is that desire. So they right now are kind of dependent on China. In fact, I've expressed, and I think this is true, that they're almost kind of a protectorate now of China, almost a sort of a colony, even maybe going in that direction of China. So they would like to have more uh, give and take with the United States. That is certainly true. So is this going to happen? And first of all, should it be named Trump Putin Tunnel? I would not vote that way. I would not vote that way. No. But the United States government, is not interested in this. The border, there is a border actually. So there is an international border, right, between the two countries there that goes between the Little Diomedes and the Big Diomedes Island. It's also the international date line, but it's a closed border. And in the winter time, some of the local people there are able to use their snowmobiles to go across on the ice and stuff like that. But effectively, it's a closed border. Who was it? Somebody, I think, a motorcyclist was motorcycling around the world, and I think he did cross that border, I believe, and I think he was arrested for a while. But anyway, it's effectively a closed border. And I think America wants it to remain that way. They have no desire right now, at least, to open that border. Although, if the United States decides that, if they sit down and say, how can we pull Russia away from China, then opening that border to actual traffic of some sort could, be a way to help accomplish that, I suppose. I don't know. Well, let's see. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But it is interesting that Russia is bringing this up again. Um, and again, I think it's the reason for their reasons are they want to they want to have close relations with the United States, and also, as the article mentioned, they want President Trump to go easy on Russia in terms of sanctions and stuff like that. But of course, if any of that is going to happen, first you got to deal with the Ukraine war. Okay, first, that's kind of a big thing here. That's kind of I mean, it's not even the elephant in the room. It's anyway, it's something that you cannot ignore. All right, so the Russian envoy brought that up, and I gave you my briefing on the Bering Strait project. Praise God. But what Father said in that quotation today is important. He says it's not just about the two-dimensional figure. You see, and this is the problem that Preston's group is not facing. They think that, oh, okay, well, just just build the external form of Father's vision, and it'll be accomplished. No, 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 no. Father said you have to have the vertical as well. You have to have the spiritual. Yeah, there has to be spiritual foundation for this. And this Russian envoy, of course, is ignoring that. And I think everyone else who has proposed the connection has ignored that. Just build a bridge or build a tunnel. Yeah, well, someone at some point, someone will make a connection, I'm sure, of whether bridge or tunnel or whatever. They're going to do that at some point. Just like the tunnel between England and France was something that was talked about ever since Napoleon, and finally got made at some point in the 20th century. So this also will happen at some point in time. But what Father emphasizes is that it's not just about the infrastructure; it's about the spiritual, the vertical dimension. If you want that to contribute to world peace, and and that's why he wanted the religions to lead the way in this, not the governments, not even private corporations, but he wanted religions to lead the way in this. And I think that aspect has not been understood by very many people at all. Alrighty then. So yes, enough on the Bering Strait project. And I'm sure that someday that will happen, and I'm sure that someday it will be made according to the way the Father desires. All right. So let's go now to China. Interesting things. Now, the fourth plenum is beginning on Monday, and China in the last couple of days has made some interesting announcements that tend to it seems that they confirm some of these rumors of purges that we've been hearing. Still, I think the thing about Xi Jinping's illness, I still think that's becoming less and less likely. Well, by the way, the summit between Trump and Xi is on again. It appears, at least from Trump's point of view, and China has not denied this. It's on again in South Korea at the end of this month. So we'll see how that works out. Anyway, but here CCP expels 9 military leaders linked to Xi ahead of key meeting. Ho Weidong is the most prominent military figure brought down in the CCP's decade-long campaign against alleged corruption and disloyalty. So yes, there's been an anti-corruption campaign, but I saw this in South Korea as well. Whenever an authoritarian dictator takes over, the first thing he does, and this is true everywhere, the first thing he does is an anti-corruption campaign. Because why is that? Because this is the perfect cover for getting rid of your enemies. Because hey, everybody's corrupt to some extent or another, and if they're not corrupt, then you can always say they were corrupt anyway. Just sort of make something up. So and the public loves, of course, the general public loves an anti-corruption campaign. Yeah, get those rascals. They've been making things life difficult for us. They've been living a life of luxury, and we're here poor. And so the public loves it. And so anti-corruption campaigns are always used to disguise power struggles. And of course, that's what's been going on here as well. But the interesting thing here now is that some of the people who are thought to be Xi allies are also being purged. And, thought to be, I say, because we don't know. Maybe they got a little bit too strong, perhaps. Maybe they became, uh, too wealthy, too powerful. Maybe they were building their own power base within the Communist Party. I don't know. Anyway, all we can do is speculate. And here, in a dramatic move on October 17th, that would be yesterday, the Chinese Communist Party CCP expelled 9 high-ranking military leaders and handed them over for investigations on accusations related to corruption and abuse of power, including a top general considered to be a close ally of party chief Xi Jinping. Ho Weidong, a member of the Politburo, the CCP's second highest decision-making body, and a vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, which exercises the CCP's control over the armed forces, was stripped of its party membership and taken down from the People's Liberation Army, uh, according to a spokesman for China's defense ministry. The announcement makes her the most prominent military figure brought down in the CCP's decade-long campaign against so-called corruption. Yes, they say so-called, yeah. Launched by Xi shortly after he took power in late 2012, the anti-graft campaign initially targeted officers loyal to the factions opposing Xi's rule. The latest purges, however, have increasingly targeted Xi's proteges and longtime associates, sparking speculation about power struggles behind the scenes. Aside from Ho, another general close to Xi, Miao Hua, was also expelled from the military and the CCP, according to the defense ministry. Miao had overseen the PLA's political loyalty until his abrupt suspension in November 2024, when Beijing placed him under investigation for suspected corruption. He lost his position in the CMC in June of this year. The defense ministry revealed on October 17th that Miao's deputy, Ho Hongjun, executive deputy director of the CMC's political work department, was also ensnared in the anti-graft drive. These individuals seriously violated party discipline and are suspected of serious duty-related misconduct involving an extremely large amount of money. Shang Zhaogang, and a spokesperson for the defense ministry, said at a briefing in Beijing. But, remember that in North Korea, Kim Jong-un had his own uncle arrested publicly and also executed in a very gruesome way. So in communist systems, just because someone is your ally today does not necessarily mean that they're still going to be your ally tomorrow. These things can change very quickly. The offenses were of a grave nature with extremely detrimental consequences, Zhang said, according to the official transcript. All 9 already have been expelled from the army, and their cases will be handed to military prosecutors. Well, wait a second. If they're expelled, why are they? Anyway, let's not get too technical here. The generals named by Beijing include these people as all the list of the people. I don't think we know of any of them. And also the former commander of the armed force, and former head of the rocket force, which commands the country's nuclear missiles, were also expelled, according to the ministry. The announcement came just 3 days before a Kyiv conclave that will gather the CCP's most senior officials in Beijing. The focus of the closed-door meeting will be the 15th five-year plan, a blueprint outlining social, economic, and political objectives for the next 5 years, according to the Chinese media. Personnel reshuffles are also expected to be on the agenda. The conclave, known as the Fourth Plenum, will be closely watched by political analysts who are monitoring any signs of a potential power transfer. The unprecedented purges of top officials of the CCP and its controlled armed forces have raised questions about the stability of the regime's leadership. Xi Jinping always talking about stability. Maybe now he's having trouble with stability. Some analysts connected to Beijing's political elite say Xi's hold on power may have waned due to ongoing struggles with party leaders. The latest announcement further indicates that Xi Jinping could face a loss of power at the upcoming Fourth Plenum, said Shen Mingxi, a research fellow at the Institute for National Defense and Security Research, a think tank funded by the Taiwan government. If further purges of Xi's appointees are announced before the conclave, it may suggest increasing pressure for him to step down. Shen, who has been closely monitoring China's military and political landscape, told the Epoch Times, even if Xi Jinping himself was unaffected, the downfall of so many generals he chose indicates a lack of judgment in personnel decisions, he noted. When the military leaders Xi elevated are accused of corruption, Shen said, the responsibility ultimately lies with Xi Jinping. And the 9 dismissed generals may represent only a fraction of the senior commanders and defense leaders currently under investigation, analysts noted. The Chinese military, which does not publicize personnel changes, has become increasingly tight-lipped in recent years, particularly amid numerous graft investigations into military leaders that have raised questions about the effectiveness of its fighting forces. Before the defense ministry made its announcement, Ho Weidong had skipped multiple political events at which his presence was expected, including the grand military parade on September 3rd. His fate was a huge topic of discussion among China observers, largely due to his connection with Xi, dating back to 2 decades in Fujian, a coastal province in southeastern China. His last public appearance was in mid-March during the annual gathering of the country's rubber stamp legislature, the National People's Congress. The regime's defense ministry previously said that it was not aware of reports that Ho was under scrutiny. Taiwan's intelligence chief told a parliamentary hearing earlier this week that 16 of the PLA's 32 active generals have not been seen in public since last December. That tally suggests the purge and investigation of PLA leadership is far from over, Hung Tzu-chi said, or an expert on Chinese military at the Institute for National Defense and Security Research, told the Epoch Times. By making public the ousting of the 9 generals, Beijing appears to be sending a message and is ready to handle and arrange subsequent personnel issues, Hung said. And then the ongoing purges within the top ranks of the PLA cast doubt on the CCP's ability to wage a war against Taiwan, according to Kung Shan-sun, a researcher focusing on cross-strait relations at the same Taipei-based think tank. U.S. intelligence and military officials say the deadline she set for the PLA to be ready to invade Taiwan was 2027. The CCP views the probably you know that. That's an obligatory paragraph that we don't need to read. Anxiety about a Chinese invasion has escalated in recent years as the CCP has ramped up military pressure on Taiwan, et cetera, et cetera. We already know about that. And let's see, Ho Weidong, who served in the COC's Joint Operations Command Center before being promoted to vice chairman of that elite body in October 2022, was believed to have been involved in crafting Beijing's strategy regarding Taiwan. According to the Pentagon's assessment, he played a key role in planning the live fire drills around Taiwan following a brief visit by then U.S. Speaker Nancy Pelosi to the island on August 2022. With the sweeping purges continuing across the Chinese military leadership, Kong told the Epoch Times that the immediate threats from the CCP may not be as severe as some have feared. Those newly appointed generals will need time to adapt to their new jobs, he said. Okay, well, we hope that that is true. Yes, there was some concern that some elites within China might want this fourth plenum to be canceled. And in order to do that, they might create a crisis, such as a war with Taiwan, that would justify canceling the fourth plenum. But that article seems to suggest that the military has other things to worry about right now and is not in shape to be invading Taiwan. Well, if that's true, that's great. That's great. Okay. So, all right. And so we will continue to watch that. Okay. All right. That's about it for today. Let's see if there's anything else that we need to bring up today. Oh, wait a second. I had something else that okay, I have some of those, but I can wait. I can wait. All right. Let's see here. TSA's new packing again. Yeah. Trump, only one who can force Putin to negotiating table, Finnish president tells BBC. During his first term, the European leaders were all mocking and laughing at Trump, and basically they were towing the line of the Democrat Party in the United States. But it's interesting to see how that tone has changed. And people left, right, and center are nominating President Trump for the peace prize, and saying that the Nobel Committee made a mistake by not awarding it to him this year, and this kind of thing. And here we have the Finnish president saying, "No, Trump is the only one who can force Putin to negotiate the table," and stuff like that. It's still the same Trump, and it's still the same Democrat Party, but now the European leaders are saying, "Hey, you know what? I guess we better read something other than the Washington Post and the New York Times. Maybe we better start reading uh, epic times or something like that, because they're clearly not in step with the Democratic Party as they were during the first term. And it's great. I think President Trump is vindicated. Just hope that he can accomplish job one, which is to liberate the 1.4 billion people of China. If it is 1.4 billion, some people have pointed out that that figure also comes from the Chinese Communist Party, and we've learned not to trust figures from the Chinese Communist Party. All right. Anyway, thank you. This is Saturday. I'll be with you Monday. Till then, God bless, Godspeed. May His kingdom come quickly.